I'm Karen Lips, president of the Network of Enlightened Women. I'm pleased today to be joined by Barb Van Andel-Gaby, chairman of the Heritage Foundation Board of Trustees and trustee of the Richard and Barbara Gaby Foundation. She's a member of the board of directors of Alticor, the parent company of Amway. She previously served as vice president of Amway Hotel Corporation and as CEO of Peter Island Resorts. She has homeschooled all 6 of her children, and she earned her undergrad degree from Hope College and MBA from Indiana University. Barb, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about leadership through our Lead Like a Lady campaign.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, well, we're excited to talk today about leadership. As women, there are many different spheres we lead in, and we'd love to talk to you and hear from you about the different capacities that you've served your community, specifically on boards of directors. Could you share a little bit about your experience and how you got involved in different organizations?
Sure. So after I graduated from graduate school, I moved to Michigan, and that's where I ran the hotel companies. I remember my first community involvement was with the United Way, of which I eventually became a member of their board. And because I was involved in the hospitality industry, I also got involved with the West Michigan Tourist Association. That was an appointed position from the governor at the time. I was quite young before I had children. And it was really a great experience, especially with the United Way, because that opened my eyes to what the needs are in our communities. And I really appreciated the opportunity to be able to serve on that particular board. But that was kind of the beginning of me getting engaged in community outreach.
Yes. Did you feel like somebody invited you on, or had you gotten involved locally initially and then kind of worked your way up to a board?
I volunteered up front. As soon as I moved back to Michigan, I started working. I said, okay, how can I get involved in my community? And so I started to volunteer there. And then over time, people noticed who I was, and they said, we'd love to have you come on the board. So it was really a great experience for me.
That's great. So really that volunteering led to deeper involvement in some of these organizations that you really cared about.
Yeah, and I would really recommend to anybody that's moving into a new community, or for all of your young women who are engaged in their communities, volunteer up front. Find out where your passions are, whatever those passions are, and get engaged. And over time, you're going to learn, given that, what you can be engaged in, what you can do to be involved in your community. So I really think volunteering is the best way to start.
Well, Barb, what advice do you have for young conservative women who want to be leaders now on campus and in their communities and in the years to come?
You know, my biggest thing I would say to everybody is, again, find your passions. So, you know, when I was a young mom, I got invited to be a part of my alma mater, on the board of my alma mater, Hope College. And I was extremely busy at that time because you have little children, and I'm working and I'm trying to make everything, all these different things fit together. And they invited me to be on the board. And I had a really good friend of mine who came to me and she said, you know, I think you need to evaluate why you would want to be on that board. Understand why you want to be involved in it. And as I thought about it and I prayed about it, I realized that that wasn't really where my passion was. I loved my college experience. It was a great experience that I had. I got involved in a lot of different activities at my college. But at that stage in my life where I was at, it really was not my passion. And that's actually, quite frankly, what led me to get engaged with the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, wow. Tell us more about that. We've had a number of our members participate in the internship program at Heritage and have had a great experience. We'd love to hear more about your role at the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, so again, I was a young mom. I had, at that time, I think 4 children under the age of 6. And I looked around and I said, okay, Barb, if you're going to be engaged, you need to be able to give the best of yourself. And that means you can't be, one of the things we as women tend to do is put ourselves into too many activities. And we spread ourselves so thin that we're not really effective in anything that we do. And so I looked around and I said, what are my passions? And at that time, my dad was serving on the board at Heritage. And he said, you know, I think you and I are so aligned in our values. And I think this would be a great organization for you to get involved in. So initially with Heritage, I again volunteered. I became engaged. I attended a lot of their different events. And then over time, they asked me to become a member of the board. And I said then, you know what? I have limited time. I'm on my family's board. I can give my time to Heritage Foundation and I can give my time to my church. And so those were kind of the three things that I focused on as a young mom. And I would have never guessed 25 years later that I would be chairman of the board. It's been a tremendous privilege for me and an honor. And I think part of it was I just decided very early on in my life that I was going to dedicate myself to the places that I had my greatest passions and the places where I could really dedicate my time. And for me, that was my church and Heritage Foundation and my family.
Yes, well, prioritizing is so important. And you mentioned finding those passions, pursuing your passions. You've got to have great leadership skills, though, to rise up. Could you talk a little bit about what leadership skills you think have been most helpful to you as you've transitioned from a volunteer to board chair at an organization like Heritage?
Yeah, I think the words that come to my mind is a servant leader. I think whenever you're involved especially in the non-for-profit world, you have to have a servant leader mentality. That means that you serve those people that you work with, whether it's on your board, whether it's the people you work with in the organization, whether it is people within your community. And to serve well, I think you need to hear their stories. You need to listen to them. You need to know who they are and what's important to them and what their needs are. So I always kind of took that mentality wherever I went, is to have kind of a servant leader. I think listening is such an important skill for all of us to learn. And I think it's a challenging skill to learn, because to be a good listener, you really have to get into the other person's thought processes and really engage with them and be involved in their lives. And so I really tried to do that with all the people that actually are on our Heritage Board from the past. I learned a lot, by the way. That's the other thing. There were some great leaders that were on that board when I first got engaged with it. Frank Shakespeare, who was an ambassador, Bill Middendorf was an ambassador, and Ed Fulner. And I learned from them. I spent a lot of time listening to them and learning from them. And I think there's so much we can learn from great leaders around our country. And I really would encourage young women and great female leaders. One of our board members, she's subsequently passed away, was Midge Decter. She was an incredible thinker of her time. And she gave me so much of her time during those early years at the Heritage Foundation. So I would really encourage young women to find older mentors to come into their lives and help you learn. And they need to be honest with you, because some of these people are also very honest with me with my weaknesses. And that was very helpful, because you can learn from people like that. And in our weaknesses, we can learn from those and we can strengthen ourselves. So I just encourage them to do that.
Well, it's great that you mentioned that serving on a board not only can be fulfilling because you get to pursue a passion, but also it's a great way to advance your career and become even a stronger leader. Could you share a little bit about how you feel like you've made a difference in your community through these boards? And is there some project you're particularly proud of that you've worked on? And what is it like serving on a board? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, I would say my greatest legacy is obviously my children. And actually, my children are very engaged now that they are adults. Actually, my second oldest daughter is working at our church for what we call community outreach. So she is completely engaged in Atlanta, where we now live, in the outreach program through our church. So my kids, I modeled that for my children, and now I'm watching my children do that same thing. And I think the greatest thing that anyone can do is to give their time and their talents to those who are less fortunate. And that is one thing that we modeled with our children. When we got engaged in the Atlanta area, there's a particular organization called City of Refuge, which is in one of the poorest areas of downtown Atlanta. And we would take our children with us down there, and they would serve. We would do feeding programs with them. We would engage with residences that lived down there. And every one of my kids said, that was a huge eye-opening experience for them. And so to me, that's kind of my big legacy, is that what Rick and I, my husband and I, had a passion about, we shared with our children and we engaged our children. And now we're seeing them do the exact same thing in the communities that they're living.
That's incredible. It's got to feel so good seeing your daughter, get engaged in the causes that are so important to you and really learn from your model. Could you talk a little bit more about being a conservative woman in leadership and talk about what skills you feel like you've had to particularly develop, or any particular barriers you felt like you've had to knock down?
I think that there is never anything different between a conservative woman or a woman in particular as far as the challenges that we face. And I think the most important thing for us to remember is what our gifts are. And I would really encourage young women to discover what their God-given gifts are, and then use those gifts. Because whatever you're gifted with, it doesn't take a lot for people to notice that. And when people notice that, they want you to be involved with their organizations. And that's kind of the way I really got exposed to so many different organizations, was just really holistically. And I would just, again, give of my time wherever I could, whatever I was engaged with, and really spent time listening to people and hearing what are the issues that you're facing, what are the problems that we have to solve. And I don't care where your background is. I think every woman has the ability to be able to do that. And every woman has the gifts needed to get engaged into their communities.
That's a powerful message. And are there any resources that you particularly turn to as a leader? Any books or podcasts you'd recommend to our students?
Well, I listen to a lot of different podcasts, so I think I'm going to be a little bit careful on that one, because there's so many different ones that I do. The bottom line is, for me, my guiding principle is my Bible. And so that's something that I spend every day with, and that's what I use every day to guide me and to get great insight. I will say that at this stage of my life, I'll promote a book, and this is for older women actually, is I'm reading a book by Arthur Brooks called From Strength to Strength, because it talks about how so often we dedicate so much of our lives to our careers, but then as we get older, we lose kind of that sense of purpose. And the beauty of the book is saying, no, you don't have to do that. You can continue to give to your communities. You can continue to give to your church. You have a lot to be able to give. And so right now, my husband and I are kind of reading through that book. It's been a very enlightening book for us most recently.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. Another topic I wanted to turn to today was, as a mother of 6 kids who has homeschooled, there is renewed interest in homeschooling. Could you talk about your decision to do that early on, and what you think about the state of education in this country?
Wow, that's an area that I do think women should and can get very much engaged in. And in fact, if they can get involved in their school boards, I think that would be a wonderful thing. I really fell into homeschooling. I had never planned to homeschool. I was running our resort in the Caribbean at the time, and I needed to travel back and forth a lot, and I wanted to be able to take my children with me, and the school systems said that that was not possible. So I said, well, then I'm going to have to figure out an alternative. And that's really how I fell into homeschooling. It's been one of the best things for our family. I don't recommend it for everybody, but for us, it was really great. It allowed us to take our children with us when we needed to travel for work. And it brought us very much closer together as a family. And I don't have an educational background. I mean, I have an MBA from, I'm a business major, but I did find that children are naturally gifted to learn. And if you can find what they love to learn, they will continue to thrive. And I've seen that in every one of my children. They are all completely unique and different, and yet they are all following their God-given gifts. And that was a blessing for me with homeschooling. I'm very passionate about that, and I'm thankful for the freedoms that we have. And I'm thankful actually for the people who were my predecessors back in the 1990s. And they fought hard to protect homeschooling for people like me, that I was able to do that with my children. So I'm really grateful for that. But that being said, I do also very much believe in our educational system. It's broken right now, but I think if parents can get involved in their communities and get engaged with their school boards, that speaks volumes. I mean, we just have to look at what's happened recently in Virginia and the parents engaging there. I think that speaks volumes. And so I would really encourage young moms, get involved with your school boards, get involved in your schools, volunteer your time there, see what your children are doing, hear what your teachers are saying, and you have a voice. I just believe 100%. We are the parents. We have a voice, and we are the ones to be the voice for our children.
Well, Barb, I can hear your passion come through as you talk about this. And I'm delighted to share that Lindsay Burke from the Heritage Foundation is going to be speaking at our conference later this month. So
that's great. That's awesome.
Yes, so our students will get to hear about some of the innovative work Heritage is doing in terms of education reform. So we're excited to have her.
Yeah, Lindsay's doing a great job. And I would really encourage the young women that are listening to this as well to get on Heritage's website and read about some of the different things that she's doing, because she has done a tremendous job.
And Barb, you mentioned that you got your MBA and your business undergrad. I know we've got a number of our students who are thinking about pursuing an MBA. Those are not cheap to pursue, pretty big investments. So I get questions from our students about them fairly often. Could you talk a little bit about the value of an MBA and where it's been helpful for you?
Yeah, for me, it really was critical if you're going to go into the business world to have an MBA. And it was a lot of work. I ended up going through college in 3 years, and then I did 2 years of graduate school, but it was invaluable for me. The other thing that I did after I graduated is I'm in a family business, and the Wharton School did a program for women that are in family businesses. So I got engaged in that program, and it was an opportunity for me to network with other women who were in family businesses. So I would also say to your listeners who are going to be listening to this, if you're going to go on to whatever the career is, find ways for yourself to be able to network with other women who are like-minded and in similar situations. But I would tell you that my MBA was invaluable. It was critical for my ability to be, and I actually even use it today on my boards. So as chairman of the Heritage Foundation, so much of what I learned through that, I now utilize as chairman of the board of the Heritage Foundation.
That's very helpful to hear. And I want to end, Barb, by asking you if you could share, what are you most excited about in terms of projects that Heritage is working on right now? Could you forecast a little bit about what's to come and what some of those exciting things that are happening?
Well, I'm certainly excited to have Kevin Roberts as a part of the president of the Heritage Foundation. He has been a tremendous blessing, and I love working with him. And I think the greatest thing that you're going to be seeing through the Heritage Foundation is we've always had great policies. That's why I've been involved with this organization for 25 years. I've always believed in that. But now I think it's more critical than ever that we go on the offensive. We need to take back our country. And I really believe through the Heritage Foundation, through Kevin's leadership, and through all of our staff that we have there, that this is an opportunity for us to do that. And it's the most critical time, I believe, in my lifetime in our history. And so I'm excited to see all of that they are doing. They're doing tremendous work, just not only on the domestic level, but even on the foreign level as well. Heritage has always been forefront in that, and they are leading the way, and they're going to continue to do so.
Well, you mentioned going on offense. And one of the things I feel like I've noticed over the years in running new is the left has really invested in women's groups and in women leaders. And one of the things we're pleased we're doing in New is investing in young women on college campuses and recruiting more young conservative women into the movement, into internships at Heritage, and to get involved and to be leaders, because I think it requires all citizens to jump in and speak up for freedom in this country, to take our country in the direction that we want to go.
And that's why we love what you do. And that's why we have been a longtime supporters of you. Thank you so much for what you're doing, because I think you are absolutely right. We need to help all these women. And I would encourage you to continue to do that. Love what you're doing and are so thankful that you are part of it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Barb, for your kind words and for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me.